Welcome to Stroke TV Show podcast. I'm your host, brain aneurysm and stroke survivor Aaron Alma. In today's show, I'll be introducing you to a young lady that is just amazing. Her name is Tracy Iona. And boy, she's probably going to be the youngest stroke survivor I've ever interviewed. She had a prenatal in utero stroke, meaning she was born a stroke survivor. Does get any more younger now as far as stroke survivor goes. She was diagnosed, they misdiagnosed her with cerebral palsy, which she was really a stroke survivor, but back then she didn't have the technology and the knowledge I did today. So they misdiagnosed her cerebral palsy. And when she was 32, she survived a ruptured brain aneurysm. Tracy also developed blood clots in her legs and lungs. Tracy survived by the grace of God and continued to live a life filled with positive outlook, sense of humor, and gratitude for every day she's given. And I want you to see something. Tracy did not let that stop her. She used her life traumatic event to help others. About 7 years ago, she started a group on the for brain aneurysm survivors at the local Long Island hospital. Tracy is dedicated to helping others using her life traumatic event to help other people. And I want to encourage you to do the same thing. So let me introduce you to Tracy. Let me bring her on camera now. Good morning, Tracy.
Hey Aaron, how you doing?
Really good. Welcome. With this, people probably don't know this, but this will be the second time we're getting together. And if you may drop off, and you may not. Let's hope you don't. But
I'm
if you,
praying.
yeah, we're praying. But if Casey has a problem with their internet, we have a signal. When you see a top of us up down to the sea, I can't hear her. And he's going to do the same for me.
We're
So,
gonna try.
Casey, it's so great to see you. Hi, where do you live? And introduce yourself a little bit. Where do you live?
Okay, I live on Long Island in New York. I'm from here originally. Um, Back in 2004, I did survive that ruptured brain aneurysm, but I had no idea I had three. I was coming out of a Broadway show with my aunt and my niece, and we were kind of rushing back to Penn Station to catch a train, and then all of a sudden, this headache hit, and for me, it felt like a brain freeze when you eat ice cream too fast. So, I didn't think anything of it. It was freezing outside. I think it was like 20 degrees that night. So I just kept going. And, deep down, I'm like, this doesn't seem right because everything started to like feel like slow motion. But my niece and I just kept going through the crowd and trying to make the train. And I'm thinking to myself, my legs feel like they're getting slower, but I kept going. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to get down those stairs? Down at Penn Station, you have to go down to the platform. And I just said, all right, in my head, my niece was only 14 at the time. So in my head, I'm like, don't fall, don't collapse. You're going to scare, I'm going to scare her. And I just kept going. And I said, in my head, I'm thinking this as I'm running. Well, not running, but walking really fast. Somehow I made it to Penn Station and I held on for dear life and to the railing going down the stairs, and we got on the train and my aunt met up with us, and we're on the train the hour ride back to Long Island, and the headache was so bad all I can do was close my eyes. And at the time it was 2004. Brain aneurysm was the last thing I was thinking of. It didn't even cross my mind. I'm just like, God, this migraine is awful. So I just closed my eyes the entire hour ride back, and the next morning, somehow, I opened my eyes and I'm like, wow, I still have this headache. And I couldn't understand it. And I was mad that I still had the headache. And I went to the chiropractor that morning, thinking because I always have neck problems and it gives me headaches sometimes. So I went to the chiropractor. They gave me a full adjustment, a massage in my neck, and then it didn't stop it. Everything hurt. My neck hurt. The bright lights from the sun, shining off the snow was horrible. So after getting back to the house, all I could do was sleep because I just had to close my eyes. So I slept from 2 that afternoon till about dinner time. And thank God my brother, who was over, he woke me up and he said he had to shake me pretty good to get me up. And thank God he did, because I probably would have bled out and died in my sleep. So he woke me up and I tried to eat dinner with them and I just got really nauseous and I couldn't eat. And I was angry at myself, like, it's just a headache, get over it, like go upstairs, try to participate with the family. So I did. I went upstairs, we're watching TV, and then all of a sudden, maybe 2 hours later, the headache just intensified by like 10, if you can imagine. And I looked over, my hand started to do this. And I looked over, my sister was in the room, and I tried to tell her, I'm not doing this. You got to call an ambulance. And all she heard was, the jarbled words. But after that, my brother saw me. He came in and I had a seizure and went unconscious. So at that point, the ambulance was on the way. A bunch of EMTs showed up. And when I came to, I could speak again and they could understand me. So the stroke had happened right before I went unconscious. So then, when I came to, I was very confused and all these EMTs were around me and I didn't understand what was going on. I thought I was just taking a nap. And I just really, I got a little upset and I'm like, what? Why'd you wake me up type of thing? And my brother had, I'm like, what is the problem? And they're like, my brother was speaking to a police officer. I didn't know because he was off to the side. And I'm laying on the couch and my brother's like snapped at me and he's like, Tracy, he's like, just cooperate. You have to go to the hospital. Yeah. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Why? So I went to get up and they're like, don't move. And I'm like, I had 13 EMTs apparently in the house because the ambulance wasn't there yet. So they're like, don't move. So I just laid there. I'm like, all right, what's going on? And they're like, we're going to get you to the hospital. I'm like, okay, we live in a raised ranch. I have to get down the stairs. They're like, no, well, we have a chair for that. So they got me. I don't remember going down the steps and in the ambulance. The next thing I remember, I was in the ER and I had a gown on and I remember sitting up and I remember having to use the bathroom really bad. My aunt was with my brother at the ER and I'm like, okay, I have to go to the bathroom. So I went to get off the gurney, the bed, and my legs were like rubber. Like I couldn't even stand. So my brother caught me and they literally brought me into the bathroom to help me because I couldn't walk. So I got back and I'm sitting there and I remember talking to the doctor who was treating me and they didn't know aneurysm at the time. My brother had said I saw her have a seizure. So they're thinking a seizure disorder. So I remember this vividly. I remember saying to the doctor, who's right here, and I'm like, oh, I feel sick. I think I'm going to throw up. And he's like, oh, go ahead. Everyone throws up on me. And I'm like, ew, that's disgusting. Why would they do that? And then as I said that, I leaned over and I had vomited. So that was it. After that, I don't remember anything for a while. And then I came to again. And I remember a doctor over me saying, okay, we figured out what's going on. You had a ruptured brain aneurysm and we have to treat it quickly. And I just said, brain aneurysm? I'm like, don't people die from that? And he's like, yeah, you're very lucky. Because I had only heard of like Laura Branigan, that singer who had died from a brain aneurysm. Back then in 2004, you didn't really hear about it much. People really didn't survive it. So I'm like, all right, well, do what you got to do. Fix it. And I went unconscious again. So I don't remember much of that night. And I guess they just sedated me. But thankfully, the surgeon on call didn't want me treated at that local hospital because it was a smaller hospital. And he knew once he treated me, I'd have to stay there. So he knew of a well-known doctor out in Manhattan. So they waited till the next day. So now we're going on to Sunday. The bleed started on Friday night. So now we're on Sunday. And the next thing I remember, I'm coming to and I'm outside laying there on a gurney. And I hear my sister like arguing with someone. I'm like, if you knew my sister, she's going to get her way no matter what. And she's like, not going to be quiet about it. So I open my eyes and I hear her yelling at someone. I'm like, Renee, what's going on? And I'm strapped down to a gurney outside in like 20-degree weather. And they're like, we have to get you to New York City. Oop, my ear buckle up. We have to get you to New York City. So, your sister's demanding to go with us and she can't because of insurance. And I'm like, listen, you're not going to win this. Just let her come. So they did. And then I remember saying, and this is the funny part, where am I going? They're like, we have to get you to Manhattan. And I'm like, you're taking me to Manhattan for a brain bleed in this traffic, in Long Island traffic? And
My
they're like,
goodness.
yeah. And this is all I'm thinking about. I'm like, why can't we take Donald Trump's helicopter? I don't know why that was in my head because we had watched The Apprentice right before I went unconscious. So, it's just the weird things that you say. I mean, my brain was bleeding, so I didn't really know what I was saying. So they're like, no, you're stable. You can do this. So I got in. My sister was in the front seat, of course. The EMTs were in the back with me, and they kept me. I went all the way into the city. They got me all situated, and they operated that night. And I had to sign all the paperwork. And for not 1 minute did I think I was going to die. That's the strange part. Like, people ask me, weren't you scared? Like, didn't you know? Like, were you afraid to go into surgery? And I'm like, it didn't even cross my mind. I was just like, get it done. Like, what do you got to do? Like, why are you waiting so long to get this done? So I signed all the paperwork, and apparently they talked to the surgeon, Dr. Berenstein, and he came in about 10 o'clock that night, and he did the coiling. Thank God. And that's another funny little story because I remember coming to and seeing lights above me in the hallway, like you're being pulled, roll down. And I saw a hand holding the gurney, and I put my hand on his and I said, hold on, before we go in there, God, I am so thirsty. Can I just have some water? And he goes, go in. He goes, you're done. He goes, it's all done. And he goes, apparently you're doing great because you're talking to me right now and you scared the hell out of me. He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, I'm so thirsty. And he's like, don't worry. Once we get you situated in ICU, we can give you Jello. I'm like, whatever. Give me whatever. I'm so thirsty. And I said, where's my family? Because I knew that a bunch of them had come up to the hospital. And they're like, oh, you have a whole room full of family. They're sleeping. I think it was like 1 a.m. They're sleeping. They took over the whole waiting room. And I'm like, let them sleep. Like, it's fine. Like, get me situated. Let them sleep. So I remember getting situated. I'm all propped up. And I have this tube coming out of my head. And I don't really know what's coming out. But apparently it's all blood. They're draining it. They did the burr hole. And I had a table. And they gave me like 5 Jellos. And I remember I'm like, I can't open them because I couldn't. At the time, I didn't realize my hand had always laid like this, open, when they thought I had CP. That's, how I used my hand. I couldn't really close it. Since the bleed, it's in a fist now, so I couldn't open it and do anything. So they opened up all the Jellos, and I'm eating Jello, and I'm just like, feeling pretty good. The headache was gone. I was like, this is great. And all of a sudden, my whole family starts walking in, and they circle around the foot of the bed, and I'm watching them, and they'll look. God bless them. I feel so bad for this. The look on their face was like they saw a ghost. Like, they just looking like this horrible look on their face. And I'm like, what's wrong? Like, I didn't understand the gravity of it all, the seriousness of it all. I didn't know how close to death I was. Like, none of that crossed my mind. And they're just looking at me like, oh my God. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, do you know who these people are? And I'm like, yeah, they're my family. And I didn't know at the time, but I had lost peripheral vision in my left, and the doctor was on my left side. And he goes, okay, who's that? And he pointed to my sister who was on the far left. And I'm like, who are you pointing at? And I said, I was quiet. And my sister, poor thing, she goes, oh my God, she doesn't know who I am. And I'm like, oh, that's my sister Renee. I know who she is. And they're like, oh, thank God. And I told the doctor, I'm like, I don't know who you're pointing to. So I said, you have to move your finger up because I couldn't turn my head because of the tube. when I knew who he was pointing at. So then I kept saying, I can't see over there. I can't see over there. And they didn't really know what I was talking about, but I lost my peripheral vision. So that started the whole journey. And I survived it. And I was in ICU for about 8 days and then stepped down. And then they moved me to a hospital closer to home for rehab. And I was there for about 6 days. So I was home. I went in April 22nd, no, 21st. I'm sorry, January 21st. And I was home by February 13th, I think. And then, it all started.
Wow. Wow. Well, you and I have something in common. It's probably not something that you and I which way had common, but I had a brain aneurysm first also. And what you tell me your story. You had the brain aneurysm. It started bleeding, ruptured in the subway. How many days did you go without it being coiled?
It happened, let's see, the Broadway show let out about 11 p.m. And so it happened about that time. I went all day Saturday. I woke up Saturday morning. Went to the chiropractor. Saturday night is when I went to the hospital after the seizure and going unconscious. Sunday, they didn't transport me till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the surgeon got there, I think, at 9 p.m. Sunday night. So it had been almost 48 hours until I had been treated.
Oh my goodness! I mean, how we didn't die because I didn't go that long, but I had some severe symptoms before. But you said something kind of struck me as the common that you shook it off. Oh, this is a migraine. I'm just having a migraine.
Yeah.
You don't think about having a brain aneurysm.
No, it didn't even cross my mind. I'm like, and I was annoyed that I had a migraine. I was just like, oh God, we had such a great night. And I'm like, why do I have to get a headache now? And we didn't know anything about brain aneurysms then. Now we know the warning signs. I knew, with that sudden burst, that sudden headache, the onset, the blind, like the light blaring in your eyes, everything hurting, your neck hurting. I learned later that my neck hurts so bad because when you're bleeding in the brain, it actually the blood starts going down your spinal cord. So everything, your neck gets stiff and is painful, your back hurts, and I didn't know that, but that's where the blood starts to go, because it has nowhere else to go. It has filled up your cranium, pushing down on your brain. So now with the BAF, the Brain Aneurysm Foundation and the B Foundation and all these foundations that have learned so much since, people know the warning signs. And had I known, I would have been like, okay, get me to an ER. This is not right. But, I didn't go to the ER until I went unconscious the next night. So, now it's so important for people to understand, I have friends that'll be like, oh, I had another migraine, and I get nervous for them. And I'm like, did it come on all of a sudden? Like, can you move your neck? And they're like, no, 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 I have a migraine disorder. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But that's the first thing I think of now. You're just like super paranoid about it. But yeah, then there was nothing out there about brain aneurysms,
Well, I'm sorry, I have to take them.
No, that's fine.
But you can put your butt back in.
Yeah, it keeps falling out. I don't know why. My left ear is like weirdly shaped. It doesn't want to stay. Okay, let's try it again. How's your throat? Oh,
Yeah, it's been
okay.
the light sensitivity and the gravity of that headache. Now, my headache before my brain aneurysm exploded felt like someone was driving an ice pick in my brain.
Really?
I went to 4 times, and all 4 times they medicated me, and then said, "I'm in with migraine medication." And I took the migraine medication, didn't touch the intensity of the headache I was having. So I'm curious now, when you had your headache, how severe was that headache?
At first it just came on, and like I said, it felt like a brain, like an ice cream brain freeze. So it wasn't like some people describe it as like a shotgun pain in your head. Like mine was sudden and it hurt like hell, but it wasn't anything I couldn't keep going with that. I kept going and running because I knew I had to get to that train. Um, but it just intensified. And then I was able to fall asleep somehow, but I didn't realize I fell asleep because all the blood was pushing on my brain, making me sleepy. Um, but yeah, January 21st every year on my anniversary, that's what we call it, an anniversary. I kind of think of my brother like, thank God he woke me up because if they let me sleep, I would have just bled out. Nobody would have known because I was in a room downstairs by myself. Nobody would have known if I had a seizure and went unconscious, and I probably would have passed away in my sleep. So, I am so thankful. And he wants to brush it off. And I'm like, thanks, Wayne, you saved my life. And he's like, shut up. Like he doesn't want to think about it like that. But, I know that he's the reason why I'm still here. But yeah, it's weird because then there was nothing. And your stroke was what, 11 years ago?
Well, I had my brain aneurysm first, and 2 weeks later, while I was in a coma from my
Oh,
brain aneurysm, I had a massive stroke. And
oh,
different years. I had what they call a subanechoic brain aneurysm. It was the center of my brain.
okay.
And I mean, you and I should not be here today. The brain aneurysm is
No,
going to kill people.
no, it's amazing how, and I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes I feel guilty. You have that survivor's guilt. Um, and I mean that because you hear of people who pass away from a brain aneurysm suddenly, and they have children or their children themselves. I know a little girl in my town who at 6 years old suddenly passed away from an AVM, which is closely related to a brain aneurysm. And I just feel this awfulness, like why was I spared? I'm a single person. Yes, I have great family, I'm friends, and I'm active in my community and such, but this is a little girl who had her whole life ahead of her. And I get that survivor's guilt. And I don't know if you get that at all, if you hear of someone.
Not really, no.
No.
I feel like I don't. I'm just grateful, and I know
Yeah.
you are too.
Oh,
Gratefulness
absolutely.
overrides a guilt feeling, I'm sure. Because I'm grateful to be alive. That's all. I'm grateful. I don't feel great by being kind of a burden to my wife because she has to take care of me 24/7. Because I've
Yeah.
been in a wheelchair for 11 years, but I am so grateful that my wife is still alive to say I love you. And she still says I love you.
Oh, that's great.
But you express your gratefulness by using your life traumatic event to help other people. Tell me a little about your group that you started at the local hospital.
Hmm.
Tell me about that.
Well, when my aneurysm happened in 2004, um, there was nothing out there for survivors. There was nothing even on the internet, as far as when I wanted to learn about it. Like, how did this happen? What is it? And I did a lot of research in the middle of the night on the internet, and you couldn't find anything other than it ruptures, you bleed, and you die. So I felt so alone. I'm like, am I the only one like who survived this? Um, and then I found a forum maybe a year later. It was called Brain Talk, and all kinds of conditions you can go into a chat room type of thing. And I met a lot of people all over the world. And I'm like, oh, okay, so people do survive this. But there was nothing locally to say, yeah, there's other people who are going through this. And you get scared and you get frustrated and you just want someone else to understand what you're feeling and relate to what you're going through. And I remember that feeling. So when I had the opportunity, I spoke to the people at the Brain Aneurysm Foundation, and I said, I'm on Long Island. I know this is a support group, but it's about 45 minutes west of me, and it's not something that I could go to. And I'd like to start something further east. And they happened to to know of someone at Stony Brook Hospital, which is at the time like 10 minutes away from me. So and Dawn Madigan, who is the endovascular department's research coordinator and an RN, she wanted to start something. So they kind of matched us up. And that's how it began. I just wanted to reach out to people in the area that survived it and are confused and scared, and to let them know there are other people out there, and we can be there for you. And if you have questions, and there were days I remember when it first happened that you feel something in your head, or you hear a sound in your head, and you're like, oh God, what was that? Is that another one? um am I going to die? Like, there's all sorts of scary things that you go through. And you know the hospital, the doctors, yeah, they saved my life, thank God. But they send you home, and that's it. You're left, you have all these questions. No one has any answers for you, because then nobody really survived. So they don't know. They don't know what to expect a week, 2 weeks, a year down the road. And, they monitor you with angiograms. And, in my case, I had to go to the hematologist for heparin. I was on Coumadin. So I had to be regulated because I had the PEs, the clots in my lungs, and the DVTs in my legs. So they had to dissolve the clots, but not to make them my blood so thin that the coils in my brain, because that basically develops a big clot to stop the bleeding from the blood going into the aneurysm. So it was a very delicate balance of not too much Coumadin, but enough to dissolve the clots, but not disturb the coiling. So I was in and out. God bless my sister. I didn't drive. I couldn't drive after that. So we were at the hematologist 3 times a week. I mean, every other day they had to check my numbers. And it
So
was all about,
do you drive now? Do you drive? How do you?
yes,
Yeah, really?
yes, I do drive now. I didn't drive for about 2.5 years. And let me tell you, the frustration of being 32 and always being out and working and doing things and just going when I want to go, I find that more frustrating and upsetting than the actual physical disabilities that I had. Um, so, with loss of peripheral vision, I got a sense of comfort, where I'm like, okay, I need to try this. And I started just practicing locally. And my sister would throw me in the car and say, okay, go. And we'd go around the block and this and that. And one day, she didn't want to see me just be scared and not try it. So we went on this long drive one day, and she goes, we're going to drive out, out east toward the Hamptons. And she goes, you're driving. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's raining. I'm not driving all the way out there. And she's like, just do it. Just do it. So, she's a little crazy. So I did it. And we drove, and I had to look constantly on my side view mirror. I have to scan back and forth because I have that void. So, I have to be ultra vigilant. And I got a little more used to it. I was not comfortable at first in bad weather or at night, so I didn't drive during those times. And I would just go to the store here and there, and I always had somebody with me. But little by little, I started driving when it was raining, or I started driving when it was dusk, and I got more comfortable with it. Then I started going on road trips to go see my friends in Rochester, and going on 8-hour road trips. So it took me a long time, but I would say after I started to drive again, it took another year or so to really feel comfortable with it.
That is amazing. Because here in California on the West Coast, if you lose consciousness for whatever reason, they take your license right then and there. I lost driver's license the very day I lost consciousness.
Wow.
And I
That's
missed driving. I mean, I had a biological. I was adopted, and my biological brother has stroke the exact same age.
wow.
Yeah, and he got me in the car and we started driving. I didn't know why mom was a judgment issue. I didn't know my wife would get so upset because I'm out here driving. He put me in the driver's seat. I'm driving unlicensed, no insurance. I could easily kill someone. I have the same
Oh,
peripheral loss vision that you have.
oh,
And
you do? Okay.
yeah, it was not a good idea to drive. But I really, really want to drive again someday. I really do. But I will. I plan on driving again today. So you're very fortunate to drive.
Yeah, I had to overcome some fear and doubt. But I was lucky because they probably should have. And back in 2004, I guess they were supposed to report it to DMV that I had a seizure, so I was on anti-seizure medication. So I
Oh,
didn't
did
drive
they?
during that time.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
So they didn't report it though. So my license was never affected. And thankfully,
Oh, I see.
yeah, that's it. They were supposed to, I guess. And for some reason, my doctors, my surgeon, they never did. And they probably knew, like, hey, it's going to be hell to get it back. So, they would talk to me and be like, "Oh, you're not driving." I'm like, "No, I'm not comfortable yet. Like, I'm scared." And they're like, "Well, when you feel, they did the field test, and I lost I had half of it gone." Then, like a couple of years later, I went back to the neuro-ophthalmologist, who, by the way, I never even know they existed. I didn't even know what they were, but yeah, they're
What are they
neurologist,
called? Knowledge? What are they called?
neuro neuro-ophthalmologist,
Oh,
and they're part of your neurosurgeon's team, and they watch for, my eyeballs are fine. It's not that that's causing, all the visual problems. It's that part of the brain that, the stroke affected, where the when you see something, it hits that part of the brain and makes sense of it. So that's gone. So he did the field test again, and he's like, I think a little bit of it's come back. A little bit of my field. They always said, oh, it's if it doesn't come back in 3 months, this is permanent. You're not going to get it back. So he did the field test, and he said that I had gained a little bit in the bottom left quadrant. So he's like, I'm comfortable if you want to start driving because you don't really need to see up on the trees. You need to see the road down below. So that gave me a little bit of confidence to try it.
wow.
Um,
Wow.
but then still, there's things out there. You can get prisms, you can get things on your mirror to help the peripheral. And then I didn't have a newer car, so I didn't have any of the technology. Now I have a newer car, which, thank God, has the warning on the side of your mirror that you go to, change lanes or something, and that's very helpful. So other than just
That's
scanning
nice
constantly.
enough with all that about that. That's really a benefit for people like us, where we have a
Yeah.
peripheral vision issue. We could, yeah, that would help.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, there are people I know that have the peripheral loss and they're not going to drive. And I understand that. And I get it. But I was 32 and I'm 50 now. And driving is my freedom. And if then I had to wait for someone to want to take me to Target or Walmart or wherever, CVS even. Now I can just go, but then it was frustrating and I didn't have the energy, never mind the ability to drive, but I didn't have the energy to go out of the house but maybe once or twice a week. So um that was difficult.
I mean, it's funny. I'm kind of jealous that you're driving. I'm not, but just
Oh,
it's funny.
sorry.
Yeah, it's funny. Hey, let's take a minute, Tracy. You'll take a commercial break for a minute, second.
Okay.
We'll be right back. Hold on.
No, no, no. We belong together.
Well, welcome back to the Stroke TV Show podcast with my guest Tracy Iona. Tracy, I am so proud of what you're doing. And some of these stroke survivors are, yeah, they don't usually. Every stroke survivor who survived has the ability to help other stroke survivors. You remember what it was like to go through it, to be alone, to feel so alone, and you can relate to anybody, and they have someone there by side they can relate to is invaluable. So I really appreciate what you're doing by helping at your local hospital. But you never talk about in the green room a subject we want to bring up, and that's the financial devastation of stroke. And
Yeah.
we have lost five bankruptcy. We have lost everything that we ever owned except a house that got from my wife.
Hmm.
But tell me a little about your experience of financial devastation of stroke.
I was single and still am. So it was just my income. I was making decent money and I was about to get my own apartment. I had been living with my sister and I put a down payment on the apartment and you don't think about it, but once this happened, I could not work at all. Um, so I had to apply for Social Security disability. Um, and that was a process. And thank goodness my aunt knew how to navigate those forms and stuff. So I was approved right away while still in the hospital. Thank God. But, I went from making a good income to making nothing to basically, it's to live on Long Island is very expensive. So I had to continue living with my family. And thank God I have family that was willing to help me out. Because I don't understand how people who are alone and don't have close family and friends to help them, what happens because when you lose your income and you have nobody else if you're single, um, you're just left. There's nothing out there to help survivors financially. There are foundations out there who raise tons of money, and I get it, and it all goes to research, and that's so important. But nobody thinks about the survivors as far as moving on with their lives, having a good quality of life. Like I'm sure people end up going bankrupt, like you and I. And for me, I went bankrupt. I didn't have a lot of assets. I mean, I was a single young person. I didn't even have a new car. My problem was the bills. I had great health insurance, and still, from my hospitalizations and the surgeries, I had almost $60,000 in medical bills. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So that's when somebody had said, you should just file bankruptcy and start, get rid of all that. So that's what I had to do. And it took until now to really improve my credit just because of the bankruptcy. Um, so for me, it's so important. And we talked about this and how do you go about reaching survivors and helping those who are just devastated by this? Um, as a single person, it's hard enough. As a married person, unless your spouse is making enough money, to support the whole household, it's devastating, but no one thinks about that. They think of, oh God, you're so lucky you survived it. Yeah, I am very lucky and very blessed, but there's more to life than just surviving. You want to thrive, you want to go on and have what other people have and, live a comfortable life. Um, so I wish there was a way that these foundations who raise so much money can find a way to help those who have survived because there's more and more of us surviving with all this technology and all the education out there about what to look for stroke and aneurysms and such. But they don't think about all of us survivors now who need to continue to live. So that hurts me. And, I've talked to a friend, Rico, who's also in California, who runs a support group on Facebook. That's huge. And there's so many of us who are just so stuck. We can't work. I can work part-time, but the deficits that I have neurologically, it's difficult to work a full workday. I have to find a job where I can work part-time, but working part-time and losing some of your disability payments, you can't survive that way. But I have to be able to work part-time. I have to be able to work in a quiet setting because one of my deficits is a chaotic environment is too much.
Yeah.
It's too much for me.
The noise.
Yeah, the loud noises, the just the commotion because I guess our brains are so different now. And, with neuroplasticity, they've found ways, your brain kind of like takes over and finds new ways to work around the spots that were, killed by the bleed. So with that, there are lots of changes as far as focus and as far as personality and moods. And, you and I spoke about this earlier, that we look different physically. Some of us do and some of us don't. There are some people that have no physical effects at all, and you can't tell that they've had this devastating event. Um, but for those of us who you can see it because we have a physical disability, um, they think about that, but they don't think about how our brain was affected as far as processing. And like I can hear information, and if there's too much going on around me while listening to that, I can't absorb it. I can't even think. Like I need to stop everything. And people take that the wrong way, that I'm in a bad mood or I'm being bitchy, or if
Mhm.
there's a lot of commotion in a household and I get to the point that I just hit a wall, and I have to either I snap and I either, yell at the little kids who are running around and being
Yeah,
noisy
yeah.
because, I don't mean to. I've always worked with kids. I've always been surrounded by kids. And sometimes I'm just like, stop, like calm down, because I can't physically, my brain can't take it. Um, so I have to remove myself. And then I look like I'm being bitchy or I'm being, in a bad mood. And I'm just like, no, I can't. I just can't deal. And I just walk away to a quiet room. Um, but people don't understand that. And because of that, sometimes I'm very blessed that a lot of my friends have stuck with me. A lot of my family has stuck by my side. We get on each other's nerves, and I'm sure I annoy them sometimes, but they're still there for me. But many people have relationship issues because people don't understand, that you're different. You're different now. How you process information, how you react to certain things, um, everything's different. And people are like, well, I'm 17 years out. Well, you should be better by now. Well, some things are permanent, and so many people don't understand that being around you. Like, just move on, just get over it. Um,
So easy. They make it seem like you should be, so you just get over it and move on. No,
yeah, you
life
know,
is the way we feel, the way we think. Our lives has changed dramatically, impacted dramatically.
yeah. I mean, never mind the financial issues we have now, and um, how do you survive that? And there's no help out there, and um, I wanted, as part of starting the support group with Dawn, is we try to educate the surgeons and the doctors, the staff, that when on discharge, we came up with a little pamphlet of things you could expect when you go home, because they don't provide that. They just said, "Oh, we saved your life. Good luck. Bye." You know,
And
and
job
it's not
get
their
the
fault.
doorstep. Job get their doorstep.
Yeah.
Which
I
life?
mean, it's not, neurosurgeons, they're amazing. They don't all have a great bedside manner. I was lucky enough that, my surgeon at the time, he's very blunt and to the point, but I know that I need the answers. So I was able to stop him and explain more of things on my follow-up appointments. I have I've since found a surgeon with Stony Brook who's closer to me now because I'm monitored every 2 years. I have to have the MRA, because I need to be followed, because there's always a chance that you could develop more aneurysms. Thankfully, my three that I have were coiled and they're still doing great. There's no regrowing of them. The coils didn't slip out. I haven't had to get more coils. I'm so blessed that I have a VP shunt because I developed hydrocephalus during that time. I'm thankful I never had a shunt revision um, to have to be done. So I'm lucky in that way. But there were so many questions when I left the hospital, and fear of what to expect, and every little thing, every little pain you feel, you feel a little dizzy or you feel confused. You're like, oh God, it's happening again, and then you find out this is your brain healing. I slept all day. Like I would sleep 4 or 5 hours a day. And my sister was worried, and rightfully so. She was calling the doctors to say, is this normal? And they're like, oh yeah, her brain needs to sleep in order to heal. So little by little, we got these information, and the fatigue you feel after a bleed, and you don't have the stamina that you used to, and you don't have, on top of the physical disability, it takes more effort to do anything. But you get so tired, the mental fatigue, the physical fatigue, and we weren't warned about that. We weren't like, this is what you're going to feel when you go home, and it's going to last. And I remember the surgeon telling me, oh, in a year, you'll be fine. You'll be back to work. Everything will be back to normal in a year. And I was like, okay. So, I was almost at that year, and I'm like, things are not getting better. And that's when I hit, this is it. He said a year, and I'm supposed to be back to work. I don't even feel somewhat normal.
Yes, I know.
I can't even go through a day without a nap, a 2-hour nap. What is he talking about? And I thought it was me. And I'm like, oh my God, I really got down on myself. And, I had a bad bout of depression. And it was 10 months after the event. The whole time I was just so thankful that I survived. And then reality set in, like, this is my life.
Well, you and I need to talk because I want to do something. My dream is across the U.S. We organize Stroke TV media. Stroke TV organizes people that go to hospitals, stroke survivors, that come to explain to the family what to expect. And then after they're released, go to their house and visit them and see how they're doing and really. So maybe you and I can collaborate on that together in the future. But
I would love that.
Yeah, it's so lacking in the stroke survivor community is that income support.
Yeah. And I talk about that with Dawn, who does the support group with me, and she's an employee of the hospital. There's so much red tape, and there's so many HIPAA laws, and it's difficult to just say, I want to volunteer. And when you know of a patient who's coming out of a brain aneurysm rupture, and the family's sitting there and they're scared to death because they don't know what to expect, I want to be there to help them get through it, comfort them a little bit, and like, okay, it feels like hell right now, but you've got to be patient with yourself, and it's going to get better, but it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, I think most of us leave. I'm not a big advocate of the word recovery. They make it sound like we got a cold or something and we're just going to wake up normal. And that isn't true. Here, I'm 11 years post-stroke.
Yeah.
And I am far from being quote unquote recovered.
Absolutely.
I believe that you rebuild after you rebuild your life after a stroke. You don't recover, you rebuild it.
Yeah. You reinvent yourself too. I mean, you have to go through I don't know what you did before stroke. I think we've talked about it. You had your own company, right?
Yes.
So now, everything's different. So you have to figure out a way to get income, and you've started this amazing Stroke TV. What you're doing is amazing, and you're reaching so many people, and to have found you on Facebook and to be a part of your show right now, I'm grateful that you're able to reach so many people because it is making a difference. Absolutely is. So you should be really proud of yourself.
Well, when I'm the spiritual man, and because of near-death experience I had, life-changing, was probably more life-changing in my brain aneurysm stroke was a near-death experience I had. But when you've given a gift, I love stroke survivors to every core of my being. I want to help them, and it's a gift I've been given and you've been given. Like you've got it too, and that's why I think we should collaborate in the future. I want you to give your hospital in your show group as a hospital, if you would, because we're out of time. But give them a shout out. Tell them hi.
I will. And sadly, because of COVID, we have not been able to get together because we met once a month at the hospital in one of the conference rooms. So since the start of COVID, we haven't met since January of 2019. And we were hoping to have started back again this fall, but with the rise in the numbers, the hospital still is not letting groups of people get together. But we're hopeful that in the next couple of months, because I miss my little Annie group, I miss the friendships we've made. It's not a huge group. We have anywhere between some months we have maybe 12 people. Some months with bad weather we'll only have 5 of us. Sometimes we'll have 20 if they bring family or whatever, caretakers. Um, but I definitely will bring up, have you found Stroke TV? Have you tuned in? There are people out there that, want to reach us and want to help us.
You
Um,
definitely send them your show because they're going to want your group members that want to see you on the show for sure. But what is the name of the hospital you
it's
do?
Stony Brook University Hospital in Stony Brook on Long Island.
Great. Because those people that first of all, shout out to all medical personnel, to say people like Tracy in my life. Thank you very much. All you medical personnel. Now, if there's any foundations out there, I want to take a minute. If there's any foundations that would like to collaborate with Stroke TV Media and really make an impact, please get hold of me. Just follow the hashtag Stroke TV, and you will find who I am and how to get hold of me. And definitely, because what Chase and I were talking about earlier about the financial devastation, it's catastrophic. I am just so blessed. I have a wife that is able to just to take care 24/7. We live on a five digit income, and it's not easy. Lots of chicken. But today's economic climate and things, the skyrocketing price chickens are becoming the cost of filet mignon is crazy. It's
Right.
becoming harder and harder. So all I want to do, if you're a foundation out there, you want to reach stroke survivors, we need your help. Get a hold of me, and
Definitely.
we'll put you in touch. But
And
yeah,
I really hope that somebody hears you and they think about this in their foundations. I mean, they're doing a great job of research and saving people's lives, but what happens to the lives you save afterwards? That has to be a component of the foundation to help us. And somehow we'll get it done, Aaron. I know we will.
well said. That's with that. I think we should wrap it up. I think it's a really so Tracy and I want to call all foundations out there, American Stroke Association, National Stroke Association, Brain Aneurysm Foundation. Get all of us and then let us help you. Let's help you
Absolutely.
help stroke survivors around the world. Tracy, I
Definitely.
cannot thank you enough for being there. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, it really has. I
Thank
knew,
you so much.
yeah, I knew the show was going to be great. I just sense the energy, and I just really appreciate you being here.
Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity, Aaron. It's great getting to know you, and I know we'll keep in touch and we'll get some things done.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So, for all those people there, thank you very much for tuning in. Please like and share this video of the show. And feel free to reach out to Tracy or myself. We're here
Mhm.
for you. If you're a stroke survivor and in need of someone to talk to you, we're here. And if you're out there and feeling alone, reach out to us.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you again, Tracy. Appreciate you being there.
Thank you, and we'll talk soon.
All right, bye.
Bye bye.